Elijah ran. His boots pounded against the dry earth, lungs burning. Something was following him. The night was suffocating. The grass stirred, not from the wind, but from something alive. Then a growl. Low, deep, close. Elijah's breath hitched. He twisted mid-stride, rifle raised, but the moment he turned, the breath in his lungs vanished. Golden eyes. They burned in the darkness, locked onto him with terrifying focus. Then the moonlight shifted, and a shadow stepped forward. The lion. Huge. Scarred. A king built for the kill, its golden mane rippled in the night breeze, muscles rolling beneath its skin. Elijah froze. He had seen what lions could do, bone-crushing jaws, claws that could tear a man apart in seconds. He had no cover, no escape. This was it. His finger tensed over the trigger, but then the lion didn't lunge. It just watched him. Its head tilted slightly, golden eyes studying him, measuring him. Why wasn't it attacking? His rifle stayed locked on the lion's chest. It didn't move, just watched. Studying him. A cold chill ran through him. This wasn't normal. Lions didn't hesitate. Lions didn't stalk their prey like this. Lions didn't... The rustling in the grass grew louder, closer. Elijah turned and ran. His legs burned as he sprinted across the open ground, lungs gasping for air. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to move. He had to get away. He had seen lions hunt before. They were sprinters, not endurance predators. If he could just keep moving, maybe. His foot snagged on a rock. He stumbled, barely stopping himself from falling. He turned, expecting teeth, claws, death. The lion hadn't moved. It wasn't chasing. It was waiting. Then, a new sound. Not the lion. Something worse. Slowly, he turned his head toward the darkness. Glowing eyes. 6 pairs of eyes burned in the dark. The hyenas fanned out, circling, their laughter crawling under his skin, waiting, testing. Elijah's pulse slammed against his ribs. He wasn't the only one being hunted, and that's when it hit him. The lion wasn't stalking him. It was protecting him. Elijah barely breathed. The hyenas crept forward, their bodies shifting like shadows, their eerie laughter crawling under his skin. He had seen them hunt before. They didn't kill clean. They tore, swarmed, pulled their prey apart piece by piece. His fingers flexed around the rifle. 6 of them. 1 bullet. It wouldn't be enough. His mind raced, looking for an escape, but there was none. He was trapped, outnumbered, already dead. A deep, thunderous snarl rolled through the air behind him. Elijah stiffened, every hair on his body standing on end. He didn't dare turn, but he knew what it was. The lion. The hyenas hesitated. They didn't flee, but they adjusted their stance, calculating. The largest one, a grizzled beast with a torn ear, let out a high-pitched whoop, testing the lion's resolve. The others inched forward, waiting for the moment to strike. Elijah risked a glance back. The lion was no longer still. Its body was low, muscles coiled, tail flicking like a whip. Its golden eyes burned, locked onto the hyenas with the kind of focus that meant only one thing: a fight was coming. The laughter rang in his ears, too familiar, too close. Another time, another hunt. But back then, it wasn't him they wanted. It was something smaller. A cub. It had been barely a few months old, ribs sharp against its golden coat, too weak to run, too small to fight. It had stood frozen in the dirt, its wide, terrified eyes locked onto him as the hyenas closed in. His father's voice had echoed behind him, firm and unmoving. "This is the way of the wild, Elijah. We can't interfere." But Elijah had already stepped forward. His small arms had spread out, shielding the cub, a feeble attempt at looking bigger. The hyenas had hesitated. Just enough time for his father to fire a warning shot into the air. They had scattered, slinking into the tall grass, their laughter fading. The cub had still been trembling, its tiny body pressed against his leg. He had crouched down, reaching out, half expecting it to bolt. But it hadn't. Instead, it had leaned into him. That moment had burned itself into Elijah's mind. The weight of the cub against him, its warmth, its trust. And then, just like that, It had been taken from him. The rangers had come, lifting the cub away. He belongs to the wild, they had told him. He'll never remember you. Now, standing here with the lion's body braced for war, its muscles ready to strike, Elijah felt that same weight pressing against his chest. He had saved it once, and now it was saving him. The lead hyena sprang, and the lion was already there. The hyena lunged, and the lion met it mid-air. Teeth sank into flesh, claws raked fur. They hit the ground hard, rolling in a blur of snarls and blood. Dust exploded around them as the lion clamped its massive jaws onto the hyena's throat, shaking violently. The hyena let out a strangled yelp before the sound cut off, its body going limp. But there was no time to celebrate. Then the pack struck. Snarls and yelps tangled in the air. They tore into the lion's legs, its shoulders, dragging him down inch by inch. The lion roared in pain, twisting, thrashing. But the hyenas knew how to take down something bigger. They didn't fight head-on. They tore from all sides. One latched onto the lion's hind leg. Another raked its claws down his flank. Blood sprayed into the dirt. Elijah's grip tightened around the rifle. He had to do something. The lion fought like fury itself. A paw sent a hyena flying. Another latched onto his shoulder. He roared, twisting, crushing bones between his jaws. But they kept coming. He drove his fangs into the nearest attacker, bones crunching between his jaws, then flung the lifeless body aside. But they were still everywhere, still clawing, biting, tearing. The lion faltered, just for a second. But it was enough. The hyenas surged the lion in full force. Elijah fired. The blast split the night. The hyenas froze, just for a second. The lion lunged, ripping into the nearest hyena with renewed fury. The others panicked, their confidence evaporating. Their eerie laughter turned to desperate yelps as they scattered, retreating into the tall grass. Then, the silence. The lion stood, bloodied, breath-heavy. The savanna was still, empty. Elijah's rifle trembled in his grip. It was over, but something was wrong. The lion wavered. Then, his legs buckled. Elijah's body moved before his mind did. He dropped to his knees beside the lion, his hands hovering over the beast's blood-soaked fur, breath coming in sharp gasps. Up close he could see the deep wounds torn across its body, the ragged gashes along its flank, the bite marks sinking into muscle. The lion's golden eyes were half-lidded, its breaths shallow, slow, too slow. Behind him the rangers emerged from the darkness, their boots crunching against the dry earth. One of them let out a low whistle. Hell of a fight. Another took a cautious step forward, a tranquilizer dart gripped in his hand. We need to put him down before he lashes out. The lion stirred at the movement, a low guttural growl rattling from its chest. Even now, bleeding out in the dirt, it still had fight left in it. It still wouldn't surrender. Back off, one ranger warned. He's wild. He'll tear you apart before you can help him. Elijah barely heard them. He wasn't thinking about the danger, wasn't thinking about the fact that this was a wild animal, that a single wrong move could end in a bloodbath. All he could see was that cub, shaking, pressed against his leg all those years ago. The words echoed in his head. He'll never remember you. But he had. And now Elijah had to do the same. Slowly, carefully, he reached out. The rangers tensed. One of them muttered something under his breath, shifting on his feet like he was preparing to jump in and pull Elijah away. The lion's breathing hitched, its body stiffened under his touch. Its golden eyes slid toward him, foggy, unfocused. It could still attack. It could still snap its jaws around Elijah's throat in an instant. But it didn't. For the longest second of Elijah's life, the lion just stared at him. Then it lowered its head. Elijah let out a shaky breath, pressing his palm fully against its mane. It had made its choice. The rangers were silent now. No one spoke. No one moved. They had seen something they couldn't explain. The lion had trusted him, only him. And as Elijah sat there, his fingers curled into its bloodied fur, he realized something else. It wasn't just trust, it was recognition. Elijah refused to leave the lion's side. The rangers set up camp nearby, speaking in hushed voices, watching from a distance, but none of them dared to get closer. No one else could. The lion had made that clear. Whenever another man so much as stepped forward, its ears flattened, a weak but unmistakable growl rumbling from deep within its chest. But when Elijah moved, it didn't react, so he stayed. The first night was the worst. The lion barely moved, its breath shallow, uneven. Elijah could see the way its body trembled, fighting against the pain, against the weight of its own injuries. The bleeding had slowed, but not enough. Every passing hour he felt that creeping fear settle in his bones. If it didn't eat, if it didn't regain its strength, if it gave up, no, he wouldn't let that happen. He tried offering water, trickling it between its teeth. At first, the lion barely responded. Then, after long, agonizing minutes, it swallowed. That was something. The next day he offered food. One of the rangers tossed down a fresh cut of meat, but the lion didn't even look at it. Its body was too weak, its hunger buried beneath exhaustion and pain. The rangers exchanged glances, already writing the lion off, but Elijah didn't. He crouched down, tore off a strip of meat, and held it out himself. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lion's nose twitched. Its eyes flickered open, slowly, weakly, its massive head lifted. And then it took the food. It was small, barely a bite, but it was enough. The rangers stopped whispering after that. Days passed in slow, careful patience. The lion's wounds began to heal. Its breathing steadied. Little by little, its strength returned. Its movements became more controlled, more deliberate, more like himself. And then, one morning, Elijah woke to find the space beside him empty. Panic shot through his body. He scrambled to his feet, eyes darting across the clearing, his stomach twisted. Had he left? Had something happened in the night? Then, just beyond the tree line, he saw him. The lion stood tall, backlit by the rising sun, his golden mane shifting in the wind. His head was high, his body strong. A king once more. Elijah swallowed hard, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. The lion turned, looking at him one last time. The unspoken question filled the space between them. Was this goodbye? Elijah took a slow step forward, his breath unsteady. The lion stood at the edge of the clearing, framed against the endless golden grass, his body strong again, whole again. For a moment, neither of them moved. The wind stirred between them, rustling the trees, carrying the scent of the wild. This was it. Elijah had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, he found himself gripping the edge of his shirt, fingers curling into the fabric, as if anchoring himself to the ground. He wanted to say something, but what words could possibly fit? The lion had saved him, had fought for him, had trusted him. And now, after everything, it was walking away. The lion turned its head slightly, golden eyes locked onto him one last time. Elijah swallowed hard. Was it waiting for him to speak? Was it hesitating too? The lion took a step forward, not away, toward him. Elijah barely had time to react before the massive beast pressed its forehead against his chest. The weight of it nearly knocked him back, the warmth sinking into his skin. Elijah's hands moved on instinct, pressing into the lion's mane, gripping the thick fur. His throat tightened, his vision blurred. This was not just a goodbye. This was something more. A thank you, a promise, a bond that would never break. Slowly the lion pulled back. Their eyes met again, something deep and unspoken passing between them. Then it turned. Elijah didn't move, didn't call out. He simply watched as the lion strode forward, muscles rolling beneath its golden coat, disappearing into the tall grass. His form melted into the wild, swallowed by the land where he truly belonged. And just like that, he was gone. The savannah was quiet again. The moment stretched, heavy and lingering. A ranger let out a slow breath behind him. You'll never see him again. Elijah wasn't so sure. Somewhere out there, a king still ruled, and if fate ever brought them together again, he would remember. Years ago, Elijah saved a helpless cub from the wild, and when he needed help the most, that cub, now a king, returned the favor. But how did he remember? Was it instinct? A bond forged in survival? Or something beyond what we can explain? What do you think? Do animals truly remember those who helped them? Can a connection like this last a lifetime? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible stories just like this one.